Okay, I need to read this out loud. No, I'm not gonna read this out loud.
I wanted to let this run because I know a number of people who helped the crowdfunding of this are having their names on the screen right now. Thanks to all of you. Thank you.
What I want to know, Brian, is who is it that doesn't want you to see this? It's an interesting film.
So there's actually a good answer for that. And, the title was originally conceived as a bit of a joke. I mean, it's kind of obviously a joke title. It's sounding like a conspiracy theory film. But if you think about it, the whole UFO mythology economy with all of these television shows, those shows are popular because a lot of people don't have a very good understanding of these topics and they're susceptible to these stories. So in effect, I would bet that the people who make the UFO cable TV shows do not want people to improve their knowledge of astronomy and astrophysics. So there actually is a they here.
Yeah, there's actually a vested interest in ignorance. Is that what
exactly? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, we're going deep already. I wanted to start with a very simple question, but we went straight to the to the root here. Yeah, I took a lot of notes. I have like pages and pages of notes during this movie. A lot of ideas and a lot of thoughts. Can I ask you one question? Very simple question, and then we can go into details of why people don't want to watch you to show this movie.
Okay.
I really like the scene when you talk to Mike West. I follow him on Twitter and other social media.
Yeah.
I love seeing his work and some of the comparison he has done in the past. I didn't know about the software, so it's great. I learned a lot. You debugged basically 3 or 4 videos in this.
Yeah.
I read from the NASA task force that there is more than 400 videos showing some weird UAPs. So why did you choose those 3 videos?
Well, those are the 3 that everyone has seen. Those are the 3 that were popular that the UFO people released in 2017. They say there's 400. Very few of those have been seen, and the few that have been fairly unfortunate, like the one that was the Batman balloon that the jet was flying past. So those are. It's because those were the really the 4 that I felt were the ones that people are most likely to have seen and to have wondered about.
Those are the ones that were on the front page of the New York Times back in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a problem with that they were on the front page of the New York Times.
A lot of people have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Seth, you want to ask any specific questions?
Yeah, I guess I do, because look, all of this is addressing the hypothesis, which is a very popular one, that Earth is being visited. The majority of Americans, as we mentioned earlier, majority of Americans believe that we are being visited, that there are craft in our airspace that are of alien origin. Now, if that's true, that's astoundingly interesting and important. And you would think that it wouldn't just be a casual enterprise to find out if that is true. Now, there's something like 800 satellites orbiting the Earth as we sit here, right? And most of those are looking down, right? So they might see something that was in our airspace, and yet they don't seem to. Why is it, if this is actually happening, that the evidence is so elusive, at least in your view, Brian?
Well, I would ask you if there were evidence of any kind, solid evidence of some sort of extraterrestrial visitor, who is one person on the screen right now that the government would have brought this evidence to?
Gosh,
that's
Frank. Yeah, me. Okay.
Frank could be down in somewhere in the teens, I think, on that list. But
yeah,
I
have the same question that says, but I'm thinking on the other side, because I'm a ground-based observer. I mean, we do have surveys that monitor the entire sky 24/7. I mean, I can give you a list of them. We have camps at the SETI Institute. We have Fripon in Europe. We have the Unistellar Network, which is everywhere in the world right now. Looking up, okay, we see small satellite, like we see the Starlinks, we see all of those.
Oh, yeah.
So how come we don't see those spacecraft, those visitors as well? That's a very important question.
Yeah.
You don't see them going up and going down, watching up and watching down.
Yeah. The answer you get, by the way, if you ask people this question, Frank, you know the answer you get. And that is, well, it's all kept secret, right? That's the blanket answer for almost all of this.
Those data are public. I mean, anybody can download data from
well, don't confuse people with that fact. It's yeah.
I mean, I asked this question to Dakota Tyler, the astrophysicist in the film, and he said, you know, astronomers don't report UFOs because we know what the heck we're looking at, which is a line I've heard Neil deGrasse Tyson give as well. And there's some truth to that. Astronomers generally do know what they're looking at when they see something strange go by in the sky.
Yeah, I think it's an unfortunate answer because it sounds to me, if I were on the outside, if you will, you know, if I were a naive person, I would say that's a cover-up. Right?
That's fair.
Yeah. So I think you can come up with better answers. But, you know.
Hey, I have a related question. Have you yourself, Seth, have you seen anything in the sky that you could not explain?
No. Now, mind you, I look at the sky mostly with radio telescopes. So, you know, maybe the aliens are radio quiet. Who knows? But I mean, occasionally you pick up a signal that you don't expect coming from a place you don't expect. But you go back and you look at it again until you've either identified it or it becomes a cause célèbre. And, you know, lots of people start looking at it. But that has never happened. In the end, you usually can figure out what it is, you know, with another night of observing. Yeah.
And you, Brian, you mentioned you have seen things in the sky, but did you always manage to explain them?
Yeah, unfortunately I did, because it was a very exciting time for those few minutes when you see something and you don't know, and you cannot figure it out. And one of them was the first time that I saw Starlink. Because I wasn't aware that they launched all in a line like that. I thought they dispersed out more or less kind of in a pattern. And so the first time I saw what turned out to be Starlink overhead, my mind was completely blown. Now, we soon got on the internet and found out in 5 minutes what it was, but that was an exciting 5 minutes. And I had similar experiences a couple of other times too. It can be very, very compelling. One of mine was really stupid. I was on a cruise ship at night, and there was a light on the horizon that was going up and down, and I couldn't figure that out until I was pointing it out to my friends, and they were looking at me like I was a moron, and they finally told me, this ship is rolling. And the illusion was that compelling. I mean, I'm aware that ships roll, and I'm aware that that's going to make a light on the horizon move, but I did not see it. So, I mean, none of us are immune to being fooled.
Yeah. I have an experience of seeing something that I had a hard time to explain, and I was not the only one. So we were observing an occultation by Pluto with our telescopes. It was in August 24, 2018, close to San Diego, Oceanside. And suddenly we heard a very loud noise and we saw lights. And we were in a valley, and we thought it was, everybody stopped talking, basically. We had no idea what was this thing. And a posteriori, we realized that it was light, there was light, and it was probably some kind of military helicopters or something like that. It was obviously a human-made spacecraft or artifact or whatever. It was definitely not. But for the first 2 minutes, we basically were very surprised as well and wondering what was this weird visitors. But now I'm disappointed to say that it was probably something military at the time.
Wait,
go ahead.
You're just going to say, just consider what might be the motivation for anybody to flash lights at us or, you know, try and get in touch in any way. They would know something about Earth if they have astronomy as a legitimate occupation on their planet, right? They would know we have oxygen in our atmosphere. which, is most parsimoniously explained as due to biology, right? So they would know there's life here. If they could build a big radio receiver or big radio antenna, really, they would know that there's technologically competent life on this planet, because the strongest signal that we're giving out that Homo sapiens exists are the television and radar signals that are leaking off our planet. And if the aliens are close enough, they could pick those up. I mean, if they're 100 light years away, the signals haven't reached them yet, but anybody that's closer might be able to find that we're here. In which case, maybe they'll respond by, flashing big lights at us or trying to sell us, some products online. They haven't done that yet.
That we know.
Yeah, but says you have a very radio view of this. I mean, we do know that the next big generation of telescope, I mean, there is some calculation which has been done for the LUVOIR, will be able to detect simply the light of major cities if we have extraterrestrial advanced civilization with the same type of light that we have on Earth. So we don't need radio for that. They don't need radio. They just built a gigantic telescope and they will be able to see the heat of our cities and they will be able to see the light of our cities as well.
All right, Frank, you challenged me to defend the radio hypothesis. Actually, it's been possible for a while for them. I mean, you can do the calculation. I've done it. How hard is it to see the lights of the New York metropolitan area with an optical telescope of the kind that we routinely perch on the summits of mountains here on Earth? And it isn't terribly hard to do that. But the thing is that if you're looking at somebody else's planet in light, you have a competing source of light, which is their star, right? That's very close to the planet as seen by the aliens. And consequently, radio has certain advantages because the sun doesn't really put out a heck of a lot of radio emission. So looking at the radio might be a good thing. You may not like radio, but it actually has some advantages when it comes to finding ET.
Well, this is why I favored Habex over LUVOIR, because it was basically a big giant coronagraph, probably the most customized instrument imaginable for finding exoplanets and for characterizing them separately from their star. But
so
who knows what experiments from either
will
survive.
We will see when we build those instruments, what will be visible by then. There is one thing I want to say. There is one part of the documentary I disagree with, and I'm just gonna say it. And Brian, I really like your work, but I don't want to pretend that everything I think is amazing.
Please.
I really didn't like the section where you basically talk about the fact that faster than light is not possible. The physics behind it is not does not exist, etc. Because just thinking about the advancements of technology over the past 40 years, you and me have seen that. Now, what we can do now, we can probably say that professor who was teaching us 40 years ago physics or computer science could not even envision that it will be possible. So we don't know what the future will be. And by saying this, we kind of give the idea to people that we have discovered everything, which is not true. There is still a lot of mysteries in the universe. There is a lot of fundamental physics which are not yet fully understood. And maybe the view we have, the physics we have, is just an approximation of the reality. And maybe one day we will be able to understand that we can fold the space continuum so we can travel through artificial wormhole by using not that much energy that our current calculation implies we need. Maybe that's pretty possible.
Well, I hear this a lot. I agree with much of what you're saying, but I don't think it's valid to compare a technological solution with something that comes up against the laws of physics. So those are two different things. We can make better and better and better technologies, but we can't change the laws of physics.
Yeah, but you basically assuming that the law of physics are the truth. The law of physics that we have are only an approximation of the reality of the universe, probably. That's the way we interpret it at the moment. Probably in the future, we will understand that physics is significantly different. I don't know, I'm making up stories here, but I mean, it's a bit too
But I think, Frank,
don't you say that?
You have to go with the physics right? I mean, obviously you can say, look, this will be possible once we know how to, I don't know, travel faster than the speed of light or send information faster than the speed of light. But, it's according to physics we know, that'll never be possible. So I think that if you don't stay within the science then you're writing a science fiction short story. You're not actually, doing the science.
Yeah, that's what Dakota was saying in the film too. You're engaging in wishful thinking now. You're not engaging in science. You're not engaging in science-driven thought. You're engaging in philosophy and wishful-driven thought.
Well, the only reason we cannot follow the space continuum, physically speaking, is because we need a lot of energy, right? So let's assume that one civilization has managed to become a K2 or K3 level, meaning that capable of harvesting the energy of the star or the energy of the galaxy. There is no limit for them to travel faster than light.
Yeah, but we also know, well, I shouldn't speak out of turn because you both know this better than me. But if you could do that, if you had a Dyson sphere, whatever it is, collecting the entire energy output of a star, and you were able to create a wormhole, you could send how much mass through it? Like one subatomic
For the moment,
particle?
not much.
You're talking about levels of energy that are purely, I mean, they're not hypothetical. They exist in the entire universe, but it's so far beyond the realm of what's practical that it's got to be considered science fiction. And it's purely hypothetical too.
It's purely, yes, definitely.
But I don't think you need
some. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, let's take some of these questions.
There are some great questions in there.
There are some great questions. I wanted to start first, Brian, with one of the most important questions that was repeated several times. What is the meaning of the shirt that you were wearing during the film?
Yes, so I've got t-shirts with this on it too, which we sell, by the way, at skeptoid.com/store.
There you go. Whoever asked that question too.
you go around town wearing this t-shirt and everyone asks that. It is the best conversation starter imaginable. What does your shirt mean? And I always ask, well, I'll tell you what I think, but I want to know what you think. And they'll go, and they come up with some very creative ideas. My interpretation is science is better than pseudoscience. But I hear some great one too. It's like reality is better than spiritualism, if that's your thing. Mm-hmm. People come up with all kinds of great ideas. It's a great conversation starter.
Great. Thank you. Maybe you could put that URL you just mentioned in the chat. I turned the chat
sure.
on. That would be awesome. Thank you. And I apologize. There's so many questions. Usually I identify and read the question carefully, but I've had to take some notes. So I'm going to do my best. Seth, question, where should people report seeing a UAF?
Well, there is a reporting facility. There's an organization that takes these reports. And it's escaping me now. It's run by this guy up in Seattle. I don't know.
Anybody else?
I don't know.
Yeah, but it's probably very easy to find if you just say it's something like UFO Reporting Center, right? That's in the name there somewhere. So if you just type that into Google, maybe you get something right away.
We shouldn't put your cell phone in the chat window then, right, Seth? Yeah. Okay.
My cell phone number? Well, but I'm happy to talk with them if they think I've won the lottery. But no.
Is that the National UFO Reporting Center? The
yes,
UFO.org?
Yes, that's it.
So
just look that up. They've standardized it, right? I mean, so they can handle the sometimes large number of reports they get. Actually, if you look at a plot of the number of reports they get per year of things seen in the sky that, could be, who knows, maybe aliens, that number was going up all the time until about 5 or 10 years ago when it sort of peaked and then was slowly going back down. I don't know what to make of that other than that maybe that the aliens have lost interest in us. But I thought that was an interesting sociological phenomenon, if nothing else.
Another sociological phenomena, I've not seen the latest map, but the map I've seen in the past show that if you speak English, apparently you're very likely to see UFO in the sky.
Is that what it says, or
United
does it say
States,
that?
UK, Australia has this kind of high concentration. France has a little bit of it, but then the rest of the world, there is almost no UFO report.
You
Well,
see,
Very
I think that's a
question this.
selection effect, though, because in the English-speaking world, there are very
I was
straightforward.
joking. Of course, it's a selection.
No joking, Frank.
It's got a lot to do with the number of web pages out there too. And there's a lot more web pages in English than there are in, say, Brazilian Portuguese. And yet that's one of the UFO reporting hotbeds, if ever there was one.
What, Portugal?
Brazil.
Brazil.
Well, there's perhaps a related question here. Somebody asked, with the proliferation of camera phones, have we seen the instances of reported evidence increase?
I think that's a very good question. I've asked it myself, actually. Everybody has a high quality camera in their pockets these days. And why is it that the videos and the photos of UFOs haven't gotten any better, right? You wouldn't expect that. It looks like the aliens are always moving back away from us, just far enough to bring the resolution that you can get with any device you have in your pocket down below what would be compelling to anybody, which is very suspicious. But I think that's a really good question.
They move into the low information zone that Midwest was talking about.
The LIZ, right.
Yeah. Frank, I was going to give you the first crack at this question. Someone asked, when are we going to put video cameras on the sky? And I thought maybe you could comment on the challenge there, maybe even using perhaps cams as an example of something we do.
Yeah. We do have already video cameras on the sky. They don't, of course, we don't have them everywhere yet, but in the US, we have the CAMS network led by Peter Jennings-Ken with a lot of contributors from amateur astronomers who basically design their own CAMS camera and make the network available. The main goal for those cameras is to detect meteor and so on, okay? But we can see anything moving in the sky. Those are on the top of that plugged now with AI system. So basically, if there is something moving detectable, the data is being saved and sent, and an alert is being sent to the center. Fripon is another system which is in Europe. It's been designed by the Observatoire de Paris, and now is almost everywhere in Europe and partially in Africa and North Africa as well. So we do have a lot of those video cameras observing the sky 24/7, connected, capable of detecting moving objects, and capable of sending an alert if there is something moving that has not been, that could be, for instance, artificial. And that's what I meant. We don't have a clear video of a spacecraft coming visiting us from those instruments.
Yeah, I should say that Avi Loeb at Harvard actually has gotten interested in this, and they have designed and built prototypes, at least prototypes, of cameras that you could just put on the roofs of, buildings in Cambridge, Massachusetts, or elsewhere that would see anything unusual in the sky. And you might say, well, all they're going to find is airplanes or, whatever. That may be, but at least they're doing it. They're actually doing the experiment. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
And that's very important. I mean, we agree on this with Together Assess, is that it's very important that we spend some funding and sometimes trying to get those observations, because that's going to be the only way we can rebut or confirm the existence of this UAP, UA, or UFO, whatever you want to call them, is by having those instruments operated by people. There is something I really like in the UFO community that I often say is that they are motivated people. I mean, it's amazing the amount of time that some people spend trying to understand. So having this kind of instrument capable of doing those observations everywhere on this planet will provide the data that we need to get the definitive answers on the existence of these visitors.
There was a rather interesting question that came up here that Margaret Race was asking, those of us who are part of
We know Margaret Race.
Yeah, she was asking, at what scale do you think we'll find the first physical evidence of alien craft? I mean, is it going to be, something the size of your backyard? Is it going to be something the size of a city or what? And of course, the answer to that is we don't know the answer to that. But it's a good question because, it seems that if the aliens actually devise craft that are as big as, Baltimore or something like that, you would have an easier time finding them than if not. There was at least one movie, actually, a science fiction film, where the alien craft were, huge. And I thought that was an interesting point because normally we assume they're going to be something that would indeed land on the White House lawn. But it's possible that the craft could be much bigger than the White House lawn and maybe even bigger than Washington, D.C.
Wait, Brian, I was going to direct a deep question I think everybody will want to comment on to you, but I want to ask a very simple question first because many people have asked it, is where can the film, well, actually, before I ask the question, let me apologize to our audience. We're well aware that Zoom is not the best platform for screening a film. And I know some people had, some choppiness and audio video sync issues. So, but it's the best we have as our little nonprofit research institute in Mountain View. And it's something that everybody knows. But people have been asking, where can people view the film in a much higher quality?
Yeah, the movie is available to rent in 4K. You can rent it at the movie's website is theufo.movie, and I'll put that in the chat. And on the homepage of that is all of the current streaming options. Right now, it's only available for rent on Vimeo, but it should be coming out, on most of the major streaming services over the next few weeks or months. Unfortunately, the timing is a total black box when you're doing an independent film distribution. So eventually it'll be pretty much everywhere, but for now, whatever the streaming options are, and it's in full quality, 4K, all zippity-doo-dah, stereo, quadraphonic, whatever you have, at the UFO.movie.
Great, thank you. So the deep question is, what would humanity's reaction be if a human-sized alien were discovered?
People would love it. That'd be the most exciting thing ever.
Yeah.
I mean, as Seth has pointed out, most people already think that.
Right.
And nobody's panicking in the streets, running around, burning down buildings.
I would like to clarify the question because first, discovered, what do you mean by discover? Having a picture, having a contact, having a conversation, shaking hands? What is discover in this case?
Well, shoot some photos, shoot some videos, put them on the media.
Okay.
How's that?
That's a good question. I mean, discovered in a testable way, in a non-anecdotal way, meaning you have someone physically, you can shake his hand and you can get a genetic sample, or do they even have genetics? Who knows? You can get a physical sample of him. You can weigh him, you can measure him, you can test his physical properties. And none of that is possible with anecdotal evidence, photos, videos, stories, TV retellings. Anecdotes don't do the job. You have to have something that you can measure its physical properties.
So imagine that one day you wake up and then you look up in the sky and you see 100 spacecraft flying around, and then they leave the day after. Can you say that you find aliens intelligent life, or you just gonna say that was a phenomena or something I cannot explain? At which moment we're gonna say those are aliens and intelligence?
Yeah, I don't think that's very much different than asking about the wow signal. The wow signal was picked up once, right? So do you completely disregard it, or do you say we heard them? We heard them. I mean, I don't think either answer is really adequate.
No, I mean, the wow signal, though, it did have recordable physical properties. We have like 6 letters on that printout for the signal strength, but we were able to record physical properties. We know it existed. So presumably, if the hypothetical you're describing, if something like that happened, we would have, radar tracks or something that we could get some physical feedback from.
By the way, the idea,
I think the most important part, if we want to have an alien be confident that we have alien coming to visit us is that we have a communication with them. I mean, seeing a spacecraft, seeing a signal, a light, listening to radio signal, etc. It's great, but truly, if we want people to be excited about it and truly embrace the fact that we are not alone in this galaxy or in this universe, is by having a communication, exchange. Just say hi, whatever, but having an exchange and a reaction from them, and that's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, one more quick question about several people have asked, but I'm going to read how Ty just recently asked this question. What did you leave on the cutting room floor that you wish you had time to include?
So people ask that a lot. They say, oh, we had the hearing in Congress and David Grush, don't you wish you'd included that? I say no, because these are just more UFO stories, most of which we've heard before, most of which we've been hearing for years. And there has not been any new science since the film came out, certainly. So, you know, I don't think anything was missed by any recent events. People said, oh, why didn't you include this UFO story or that UFO story? I really, really did not want this to turn into a debunking film, because that turns off so much of the audience. I included a few stories because I felt they were important examples of how you discern good evidence from bad evidence. And that was the point that I wanted to make. I didn't want to just start going down the list and debunking everything and being negative about stuff, because that's not the important part of the story here. The important part of the story is, you know, what's real out there? Are there civilizations out there? Might we be able to get in touch with them, and how do we do it? I think that's what I wanted to explore with this film.
Thank you.
There's a question here about David Grush. I'll just say something to antagonize anybody who's still watching us. Because David Grush said in that short video interview of him that the federal government routinely goes out and retrieves crash debris from aliens that have come to Earth and somehow aren't very good navigators, and they plow into the dirt, that kind of thing. But when he was asked to provide examples of this so that they could be followed up, so that they could be checked out, he said, well, I can't do that because it's all classified. And I would suggest to you that you be very skeptical of explanations that depend on some hiding of information. This story would be so important, I don't think you could hide the information, not for very long.
I mean, during his public testimony, he mentioned briefly two stories specifically, and they were both very old, thoroughly debunked UFO stories. One of which was openly a hoax, and the other was simply tabloid fiction. David Grush is a lifelong ufologist. He is good friends with Lou Elizondo and this whole group of people who have gone back years together believing in UFOs. When you want to put someone in front of Congress to raise concerns about UFOs, you don't go to the military intelligence community and say, who believes in UFOs? You go to the UFO community and you say, who here has been a veteran? And he was one of the guys who put his hand up. And that's why it's so easy to get veterans or people from military intelligence who believe in UFOs. You don't find them by going to the military intelligence community. You find them by going to the UFO community. And that's the background that he comes from.
It's so unfortunate, Brian, that the aliens have arranged things so that they can only be seen by the military.
So I have a question. What do you think is the motivation of this?
For
these people to
promoting the UFO story? Well, I don't think there's any evil motivation at all. I mean, I think I call me old-fashioned. I think most people are generally honest and good people. I think most of their motivation is that they believe that this stuff is true. They believe that it's important, and they want other people to accept those beliefs. There is some element of deception. For example, the way that they got their stories into the New York Times, You know, that's a long story that we're probably not going to get into tonight. But it was all in pursuit of their belief that this information is important, that they want other people to believe in it. You know, this whole thing with life after death and interdimensional ghosts, and that's somehow reflected in the UFO phenomenon. It's a very strange belief system, but that's really what's at the core of all of this. I don't think it's evil, and I don't think it's, certainly they are, some of them are making some money, and many of them are setting up consulting companies hoping to get government contracts. But I think at the core of it, it's just simply about beliefs.
All right.
What about you, Seth? You want to answer to this?
Seth
question?
looks more cynical about it than I do.
Oh, I don't know that I'm cynical. I actually am not cynical. I hope I don't become cynical. But on the other hand, I really do believe, this is a quote from a friend of mine, actually an astrophysicist, but yeah, who said to me, said, Shostak, if I thought there was a 1% chance that any of these sightings were real, I would spend all my time working on it. And he isn't. I think that says a lot.
Yeah,
that's an answer that I give myself to people when they ask me, when I tell them I work at the SETI Institute, and they ask me if I'm interested in this UFO and so on. I say, yeah, the universe is vast. There is so many great discoveries to make, like finding life on another planet, or detecting a radio signal coming from a technological civilization, that I don't have the time, neither the energy or the money to spend trying to debug or to understand if those UFO are real or not. I'm not really convinced that they are real, so I don't want to spend my time doing this.
yeah, I hear that a lot from people. It's a fairly universal perspective. People who are in the business, who are the people that the government would be contacting to work on these things, none of them have ever gotten that call.
Okay,
Right.
I know that you guys are going to be with us for about another 10 minutes, but I wanted to just interject and thank our audience for for joining us for movie night. And if if your dinner is getting cold or bedtime is awaiting you, please feel free. But I wanted to thank you and remind you that we are a nonprofit research institute. We put on movie night and many other outreach events to inform the public about the work that we do, and we couldn't do it without your support. So thank you, all of you who support the Institute, and we hope you'll continue to follow us. So that said, thought we'd just I thought I'd shift and plug SETI a little bit. Frank, you gave me almost a segue. I'm going to conflate two questions from the audience together. One was related to what is the chance of life existing within our solar system, given that we know Europa is covered in water? And perhaps, as you kind of take the first answer or first comments on that question, perhaps you could also comment on the biosignatures that we are searching for on exoplanets that would provide evidence of life.
You want me to answer to this, or?
I'd love for you to take the first.
Your name on it, sir.
First shot.
Okay, so I always see SETI as kind of a competition, in fact, between searching for life in our solar system, on exoplanet, and elsewhere through radio and laser. So let me talk about solar system. Our solar system is very interesting because now we know there is water almost everywhere. There is more water on the ocean of Europa than there is on Earth. Life appeared on Earth extremely quickly as soon we got liquid water, even when the planet was not hospitable. I mean, high radiation, volcanic activity, etc., etc. We had this formation of very simple microbiological life. So the take from that is that it's very likely there is life elsewhere in our solar system. One of the places that I think we will find life, because we already have some great smoking gun indications, is the moon of Saturn Enceladus. I mean, there is some very interesting chemistry happening there. We detected some trace of metagenetic chemistry. Recently, they discovered phosphate, etc., etc. So there is something very cool happening underneath the ocean in the ocean of Enceladus. We will know that probably in the next 5-20 years when we send spacecraft over there. Then the second track is to search for life in exoplanet. So we know there is, as you mentioned in the movie, Brian, there is more than 5,000 exoplanets known so far, and we know that there is at least 300 million of them in our own galaxy that could have liquid water, temperate temperature, right? So water could be almost everywhere in our galaxy. So once again, maybe life is there, but that's a simplification because we know that to have life, you also need to have energy. You need to have some kind of perfect equilibrium, etc. To have life that lasts for 4, 5, 6 billion years, so it's detectable and it evolves in complexity. We need to have a stable system somehow, and that's something we don't really understand. So my bet is that we are going to find microbiological life everywhere in our galaxy around exoplanets. But complex life, and I'm not talking about human being capable of talking on Zoom. I'm simply talking about animals with multi-cells and so on. It's way more difficult. The diversification of life on our biosphere happened only 800 million years ago. So it's very something new in the scale of the age of our planet, which is 4.5 billion years. I'm sorry, I gave a lecture, but that's. In short, we will find life in our solar system and elsewhere in our galaxy in 5-15 years, and it's going to be microbiological life first.
If you think about it, in our own, as Frank has already alluded to, if you think of just our own solar system, there are 6 or 7 worlds. They're mostly moons, although the atmosphere of Venus is not a moon, but they're mostly moons. 6 or 7 worlds that could support life because they're liquid. They're liquids, mostly water. That are present in these atmospheres or on these surfaces. So there could be a lot of life in our solar system, but it's probably not going to hold up its side of the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that, aquatic life, they can have a stone age, but it's going to be very difficult for them to advance to an iron age because they're probably not going to be able to develop fire. They're probably not going to be able to develop metallurgy unless they're somehow able to get very creative with underwater volcanic vents. But it's a completely different set of problems, and that I know this is something that astrobiologists actually do think about. In fact, you probably have people there at SETI who are researching questions right along that line.
Well, we certainly have had people who are interested in dolphins. You were alluding to dolphins. Dolphins don't develop too much machinery because it's kind of hard to do in a watery environment. Yeah. But the people who do that, because of the fact that it's another instance of fairly sophisticated intelligence. One of the big questions here is not so much life. I mean, that's an obvious question, but if I give you a million worlds with life, how many of them develop intelligence? And the answer to that question is we don't have the answer to that question.
Yeah, it might be 900,000. It might be 0.1.
Yeah.
And I'm always optimistic when I say that we're gonna find life, but microbiological life in 5, 10, 15 years. But based on the result that appeared, I think last week on the planet K2-18b, I mean, this is a very interesting result if it's confirmed. There is a detection of molecules that I didn't know much about.
Yeah.
Sulfide, dimethyl sulfide, sulfide dimethyl, something like that. But it's a molecule which is produced by phytoplankton on Earth. So that could be a good marker of biology and the biosphere in the ocean of this super Earth. I mean, we are getting to the point where we are capable of detecting those kind of markers and those kind of biosignatures. It's super exciting for scientists and biologists and astronomers.
We just need to accelerate that next generation of space telescopes and start resolving atmospheres, start collecting some spectra.
I have a ton of ideas, but we need money for that.
I would like to ask, I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be on here, but would it be possible for me to stick around and continue answering questions after the event, or does the Zoom thing quit?
Absolutely. I can leave it on, and you know, we're about half of our audience has left us. That's okay. But I was going to just ask one more question from Pierre, and I was going to direct it to Seth. But Brian, you know, brought up METI, messaging extraterrestrial intelligence during the film, and I'm going to paraphrase Pierre's question: should we be worried?
Yeah. Well, of course, METI is indeed involves transmitting. In other words, we don't just sit back with some big antennas and try to eavesdrop on the aliens. We try to interest them in getting in touch by broadcasting messages to them. And some people would say, as is being implied here, that that's a dangerous thing to do because you don't know what's out there. And all you might do is simply signal the fact that Earth has some sophisticated life, mostly sophisticated life, and all you're doing is bringing, them down on you with their intergalactic battle wagons to destroy our planet before we start competing with them in some way or other. This strikes me as paranoia, but on the other hand, the potential downside is so serious that maybe it's worth giving some thought to whether you should broadcast deliberately into space. But personally, I think it doesn't really matter because we are broadcasting into space. The strongest signals leaving Earth are our radar and television, right? And those are going out 24/7, and nobody is suggesting that we turn off the radars at the local airports because you might betray our presence to the aliens. So you can worry about this if you're looking for things to worry about, but it doesn't seem to me that there's much point in it.
Okay. Well, Brian, thank you so much for doing this and for being willing to stay on and answer more questions.
Well, I really want to thank you guys and thank the SETI Institute for showing my film to all these people. I really could not have asked for a better opportunity to get the film in front of the audience I would most love to see it than this right now. So truly, I do consider tonight to be the pinnacle of the film's release trajectory, whatever that turns out to be. Should it ever show up on the streaming services, which is getting very frustrating. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity. I had a ton of fun. And again, just to everyone who's still here, I would like to stick around for a bit and take some more questions.
Thank you. Yes, applause. And thank you, Frank, and thank you, Seth.
Yeah.
Co-hosting tonight. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to leave the Zoom session live, and okay. I'll let you take it from there. I'm assuming you see all the questions, and I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.